They're shutting down the power. There's fires sweeping the state. Businesses have been shut down due to the rampant homelessness problem. There's a rampant homelessness problem, dirt, filth, disease, the return of bubonic plague, medieval diseases, typhus outbreaks. California, what is going on? They can't seem to solve the homelessness crisis. And we got San Francisco, which is one of the wealthiest places in the country, riddled with human waste. And that brings me to today's story. Manhunt is on after 2 homeless men were struck with an arrow in a San Francisco Bay Park by an archer on a purple bicycle. Okay, what is happening to California? Now, I get it, man. You can't just highlight one weird story and be like, the world is ending. But I want to talk a bit about what's, look, I can say it a million times, California is facing all these ridiculous problems. We've got a couple stories now in this vein. And I also want to highlight the weird obsession of the left on things that are probably not relevant. Because while stories like this happen, we have a couple other stories. A new district attorney who wants to decriminalize certain activities like homelessness. And there's an argument around this. There is. Do we really want to put people in jail for being homeless or being poor? The problem is, man, your state is kind of falling apart. Okay? How do you remove a homeless person who's sleeping in front of a store, destroying the economy of this place? I understand not one homeless person is doing this, but when you have a street full of homeless people, yes, the law is there so you can tell them to leave. I don't like the idea of punishing people because they're poor. I actually think we should do something to solve it. And then brings me to the next point. California won't. Okay, I'll tell you what, man. If you have a Democratic supermajority, you should have no problem steamrolling through policies that actually solve the problem, right? They haven't done it. They've actually rejected a lot of these proposals, and they don't offer up real solutions. They try to sweep it under the rug. You see what New York State is doing? Shipping homeless people to other states. So what happens then? California says, we're going to decriminalize this behavior. You're going to get more of it, dude. You're not solving any of these problems. But I'll tell you what, man. I can rant about California all the time and say something is wrong with your state when you've got human waste everywhere, mass fires, which I understand is not your fault, power outages. You've got a guy on a purple bicycle firing an arrow at homeless people. Okay, I think the homelessness problem is getting pretty bad. Something's got to be done about it. So I know that I can turn to the progressives, especially the California progressives, to come up with a real solution, right? No, because you know what they're complaining about right now? Look at this story. A passenger was waiting to board a Bay Area rapid transit train, was stopped by a transit agency police officer, detained, and cited for eating a sandwich. Okay, let's stop for a second here. First, is this really what law enforcement is focused on? Okay, I'm gonna stop right here. I'll agree with the left to a certain extent. You're really gonna jam some dude up for eating a sandwich? Can't you do something about the other problems, California? I'll tell you what, man. Too much of the bureaucracy in California is concerned about the path of least resistance. It's too difficult to solve the problem of homelessness and drug abuse and businesses failing and high house prices and all of these things negatively impacting the state. It's too difficult. I'll tell you what's easy, though. Stopping a dude eating a sandwich. Hey, man, at least then I can show my quota forms or whatever. Look at all of the people I've stopped and cited. But I will stop there and say, while I certainly think, based on what's happening, like a homeless guy on a bike firing an arrow at homeless people, you got other things to worry about, law enforcement, okay? But hold on. This story should not be on Twitter. NBC should not be writing about it, but they are because progressives made the video go viral. So first, let's be fair. This cop is a transit cop. It's specifically his job to enforce laws on transit. I'm not going to blame this cop because he isn't going around cleaning up poop or stopping homeless people from pooping, okay? Not his job. There are other police and government agencies that are supposed to deal with that kind of stuff. His job, keeping these train platforms neat and orderly. Here's the thing. Okay, you got a guy who was shot with a bow and arrow. I think that's more newsworthy. In Chicago, you have people losing their lives to violence all day, every day. Nobody complains. Nobody talks about it. But you know what they talk about? People eating sandwiches, okay? We recently had a story from BuzzFeed. And it wasn't just BuzzFeed. A lot of people wrote about it, claiming 2 black men fought to the death over fried chicken. It's just not true. That was not the story. It was that 2 guys got into a fight. One guy stabbed the other guy, and it just so happened to have been at a Popeyes when the new sandwich was coming out. But they couldn't resist. The story they wanted to push was the one that was, the offensive, embellished headline. It's not true. It's not what happened. Why is this story going viral? Everybody's outraged. How dare you stop a man for eating a sandwich? Dude, the guy got detained. He got a ticket. Why is that news? It happens all the time. And when I said this, here come the progressives saying, oh, perhaps you're okay with the authoritarian state stopping someone from eating sandwiches. No, hold on. Okay, hold on. There's a reason why we passed a law to make it so you can't eat on trains. It doesn't necessarily mean we should jam somebody up over eating a sandwich. The cop should have probably been like, hey, my friend, can you put the sandwich away? And the guy probably would have been like, all right. That would have been the end of it. Okay, so I do think it's stupid, but you gotta understand. It's a petty offense. It's not a big deal. When a cop says, hey, you got ID, you can't be eating sandwiches here. You say, yep, yeah, you can't be eating sandwiches. The dude didn't go to prison. The dude wasn't beaten. It was just some dude who was angry that he was getting a ticket. Guess what? Most jurisdictions, most metros, make it illegal, okay? Petty offense, you get a ticket, don't eat on the train. You know why? Have you ever been on a train when people are eating? It is awful. I'll tell you what, it is awful. And so here's what happens. At some point, you got a problem with food, and the people come together and say, we want to pass this law. Our elected representatives want to say you can't do it. This is what they're mad about. Meanwhile, in the state, you've got DA candidates, this is going back a couple weeks, saying, we will not prosecute cases involving quality of life crimes, such as public camping, offering, or soliciting adult activities. Public urination, blocking a sidewalk, should not and will not be prosecuted. Many of these crimes are still being prosecuted. We have a long way to go to decriminalize poverty and homelessness. You see, you have a problem with people doing their business in the streets. So you literally have one of the candidates, I think they may have gotten elected, I'm not sure, saying, we're going to decriminalize more of that. You know what, man? There's a problem with the left in terms of the battles they choose. And I think that may be one of the big differences between conservatives and Democrats and moderates to an extent. I always wondered why it was that the rioting that took place around Black Lives Matter was around questionable stories, right? You had Michael Brown, and it was a debate over whether his hands were up or not. And people were saying, no, you're right, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, this is not a clear-cut case. It's going to make for a very, very divisive issue. But then you had that other dude who was legally permitted to be owning a gun. And a cop, pulled him over, and he did everything right. He says, yes, officer, I have a gun. And the guy says, don't move, and just boom, shoots him. Or what about the guy who was told to get his ID, and when he goes to reach for it, the cop shoots him? There are so many stories where we can say, hey, that was unjust. Why don't we protest this? They don't do it. They protest the people who have clearly either done something wrong or it's debatable. So that's what we have here. You got all these people sharing a video being like, oh my, a cop stopped someone for eating a sandwich? And I'm like, why is that news to you? Like, that literally happens all the time, and it's not a big deal. Just don't eat the sandwich. Listen, man, you want to talk about injustice and government suppression? I'm not going to start with a dude getting a ticket for eating a sandwich. I'm going to start with, marginalized communities, for instance. We can talk about St. Louis. We can talk about people who are wrongly arrested or arrested for smoking pot. We can talk about how people should have a right to consume certain substances. I'm much more libertarian on this stuff. I think pot should be legal. I think a lot of drugs should be legal. And I think the government should be focused on rehabilitation and helping people get off drugs and do them safely to help them, not just arrest them. Can we start there? Instead, what do we get? We get outrage over a dude on a train who ate a sandwich and got a ticket. That's what they're talking about. And it's frustrating to me. California is becoming a wasteland, okay? They've got problems in SF with human waste, so they decided they're going to make it they're going to legalize it. They're going to decriminalize it. Well, dude, what do you think's going to happen? It's not a quality of life issue. Sometimes people get drunk and they piss all over the place. Yeah, tell them not to do it. I do think there's a big problem in this. I've heard stories of people who have gotten on the registry, on the offender registry for public exposure because they were, going about their business in public. I'm like, yeah, whoa. That's a little different, man. Come on. But in the end, how do you solve the problems California is facing? First, you need an active base of individuals to identify the problem and call it out. Well, I don't live in California. I call it out. What about the activists? Nope. They just say the city will hire poop patrol and go around shoveling stuff up, and the activists actually decriminalize the behavior. It seems like they're going backwards. So when you've got a failing budget, when you've got mass disaster, you've got mass homelessness, and your response is we're going to provide benefits to non-citizens, I'm just like, you know what, man? It's the wild, wild west. That's what it's all about. It is mismanagement beyond mismanagement. Because let me just do some math for you. How about instead of giving healthcare to non-citizens, you use that money to help the people who are sleeping and crapping on your streets? How about instead of complaining about a dude getting a ticket because he was eating a sandwich and that's how he got a ticket, and everyone's like, oh, injustice, injustice, it must be stopped. How about you complain about how the government is mismanaging everything? How about you complain about the rampant homelessness problem and the violence now emerging in its wake, or the drug abuse? Why don't you get angry about the people in power failing to do their job to solve these problems? You elect them, they don't do it, and instead you complain that someone got a ticket? Listen, you want to change the law? Fine. But to me, it's crazy that the priority right now among many of these progressives is we should repeal the law that makes it a citation to eat a sandwich on the train. Is that what you're focused on? See, this is the big problem. You look at Los Angeles and the diseases and the homelessness. You look at San Francisco and the human waste, Sacramento and the homelessness, the businesses that are freaking out and they're pulling out. And what do the activists say? We should be allowed to eat food on trains and we should allowed to urinate in public. And I'm like, okay, dude. I don't get it. I really don't. It seems like a lot of the outrage is random. Like, I don't know why they're mad about this. Is this really the biggest problem you have to focus on right now? That some dude got a ticket for eating a sandwich? That we should repeal the law saying that you can't eat sandwiches on the train? That's nuts to me. Okay? Listen, if you know you can't eat a sandwich, don't do it. And I'll throw some slack, some criticism toward the cop. Cop could have just said, hey, warning, put the sandwich away. You can't eat it on the train. But he decided to jam the guy up. So I get it, man. But am I gonna dedicate a whole video to complain with the injustice of not being allowed to eat a sandwich? Or am I gonna talk about the greater problems like the massive fires, the blackouts? They had a drought for several years. They got natural disasters up the wahoo. They got homelessness and drug abuse. Let's talk about real problems. But you know what? You get what you deserve, California. You get it. Because if that's what you're concerned about, don't be surprised when a dude rides by on a purple bicycle and fires an arrow at homeless people. That's what you get. Because you won't deal with the problem. Maybe that's what it's really about. Maybe it's easier to say, don't look at the homeless crisis. Look at this man and his sandwich. It's the police that are the problem. That's probably it. The reason why so many people are willing to share this is they know they haven't solved the homelessness problem. It's only getting worse. The diseases are getting worse. The garbage is getting worse. You need some conservative dude, I think Scott Presley's his name, to come and clean up the messes in California because they ain't doing it. What are they doing? Demanding they be allowed to eat sandwiches on trains. Okay. All right. Listen, man, you get the government you deserve. And I don't think anybody in California actually cares about California. I'm being hyperbolic. Obviously, there are people who do. But I mean, I think these politicians are like, I want to be rich and powerful. And these activists are like, I want to feel good about doing something. But they know that if they actually try to tackle the serious problems affecting the poor in the state, it'll be difficult. It'll make them look bad. And it'll be painful. But here's what the activists can do. I tell you what battle you can win in 2 seconds. The activists will win the fight over the sandwich. And the politicians know that they can win in 2 seconds over a sandwich. And the cops know it's easier to enforce laws against a sandwich than to enforce laws against the homeless. And then it trickles back up to the politicians. Decriminalize the public camping, decriminalize public urination. Congratulations, you'll get more of it. No one here is interested in asking the hard questions and solving the real problems. So in the end, here's where we are. A guy riding a bicycle fired an arrow at homeless people and struck them. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live in California. And that's probably why people are leaving. We've seen stories about businesses shutting down and people fleeing the state. Apparently, there was statistics showing that there's more exodus, there are more people leaving California than coming to it. And this is probably why. Because these are the politicians you voted for. So congratulations. If you elect somebody who's interested in only empowering themselves and virtue signaling instead of actually wanting to address real issues, this is what ends up happening. Nothing gets solved. It only gets worse. But congratulations. Now you can piss in public and eat sandwiches on the train. Good job, activists. You see, this is why I don't want to live in these cities and I don't want to live in California. New York, at least, ships their exports their homeless to other states. I'll tell you what, man. That's nightmarish. That's dystopian. They've been accused of doing it before. But I will say one thing for New York. It does temporarily solve the problem of homeless people camping and pissing in the streets. California, on the other hand, does literally nothing and then legalizes the behavior. So you know what? I'm not a big fan of big government. I'm not a big fan of enforcing ridiculous laws. I don't know how you can penalize people who are poor. You know, if they have nowhere to sleep, what do you do? But I will say this. Instead of wasting your money and your time and your energy on these nonsensical issues like eating sandwiches, figure out how to solve the homeless crisis. Figure out how, instead of giving money to non-citizens for their health care, why don't you use that money to set up shelters to put these people, like to bring them somewhere safe? No. Instead, California says if you're under the age of 26 and you're not a citizen, we're going to give you health care. All right, man. You know what? You reap what you sow. This is the government you deserve. So enjoy it, California, because it's what you want, right? Maybe not, because apparently people are leaving. Anyway, you get the point. I hope they catch the guy on the purple bicycle who fired an arrow at the homeless people. That's nightmarish. But hey, there we are. I'll see you all at 4 p.m. youtube.com/Timcast for the main channel segment, and thanks for hanging out.